at the waypoint 0 mark, 400 meters below the station, and approach 1. That takes us right in front of the docking axis inwards to make contact with the International Space Station. Flight control teams working in tandem together. You're seeing the teams over in Hawthorne, monitoring Dragon's performance, working with the crew inside. Great views of the International Space Station, only 500 meters away at this point, and you can start seeing the features that make it seem as though the Dragon is right underneath. We're almost there, about 7 minutes away from waypoint 0. This is about what 500 meters looks like. Right now we're over the North Indian Ocean. We're about to cross the southern border of India here soon. Still in an orbital daylight, expecting that sunset in a little less than 20 minutes. The crew inside Dragon monitoring the performance. You can see in the middle screen there, that point at the very bottom, that's the Dragon spacecraft, and they're trying to meet with that point right below the space station. And you can see what the maneuver is about to do. It's about to swing it right at that point, right in front of the docking axis. The cone you see in the circle in the middle of that screen. Features of the International Space Station becoming a bit more prominent. The solar arrays on both wings of the space station, to the left and to the right. The forward port, where Dragon Freedom and the Axiom crew will be docking, is at the very tip of this view here. That is the Node 2 forward port, International Docking Adapter. Dragon again will swing from this view from the bottom right out in front to meet with the docking axis. Commander Michael Lopez-Alegria on the left of your screen, one of the 4 crew members inside Dragon Freedom, suited up, ready to monitor these operations. Pilot Walter Villaday to the right. Alper Gezerachi is also a mission specialist, as well as Marcus Want. The 4 crew members make up the Axiom Mission 3 crew, headed to the International Space Station for a 14-day stay. Counting down 5 minutes to waypoint 0. 3:58 is the approximate time of executing that approach maneuver. Again, it's the service section Dracos on the outside of the Dragon spacecraft that will take it, that will be fired and make sure that the Dragon converges to waypoint 1, again right in front of the International Space Station. Three and a half minutes to approach 0. That's the waypoint marker. We're getting views, continuing to get views from the ground stations, providing that video from the Dragon spacecraft, and of course continuing to get great views from the International Space Station. We're now flying over India. Right there you're seeing the southern coast of India. Dragon and the International Space Station flying.
We see range less than 400 meters and attitude as expected.
Houston copies.
NASA astronaut Laurel O'Hara confirming the data that she's seeing, again, from inside the International Space Station. She and Jasmine Moghbeli, another NASA astronaut, monitoring Dragon's approach to the International Space Station, confirming the data that they're seeing on their screen. External cameras on the International Space Station continuing to track Dragon Freedom. Still getting fantastic views as Dragon and International Space Station are flying over India. Dragon is inside 400 meters, just waiting for confirmation of that waypoint 0 and approach 0 maneuver. Both vehicles flying at 17,500 miles per hour. And we're just seconds away from converging on waypoint 0, standing by for that approach maneuver. And confirmed, we're in approach 0 now. Service section Dracos are firing, standing by for the performance of that approach maneuver.
Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop. Approach 0 has started and the trajectory has converged on waypoint 1. You can expect arrival at waypoint 1 at 1025 UTC.
That's freedom, we copy.
And with that, the teams have confirmed a good approach 0. That was a good burn, and we're converged onto the next waypoint, waypoint 1, being 220 meters right in front of the International Space Station. The read from the crew operations resource engineer to the crew aboard Dragon Freedom confirms that we're looking at 4:25 a.m. Central Time for that expected arrival time at waypoint 1. Again, the teams have polled a go, no-go for passing those two waypoints, waypoint 0 and waypoint 1. So we'll see a maneuver very similar to what we've seen for waypoint 0, where when we reach that waypoint, the approach maneuver will be immediately executed. No hold is expected. However, teams will continue to monitor their performance. Everything's looking good so far. With that, we're just about 25 minutes away from that waypoint 0. So why don't we toss it back over to Hawthorne and check in with the teams over there, Kate and John.
Thanks, Gary. For those of you that have just recently joined, we are tracking the approach and docking of Dragon with the AX-3 mission approaching the International Space Station. We do expect contact to occur around 2:40 a.m. Pacific, so coming up in about 40 minutes from now. Everything is going really well so far. We are now just past the 400-meter mark, or waypoint 0, heading toward the 220-meter mark, waypoint 1. And as Gary reported earlier, the teams polled yes to not have to stop at either of those waypoints. Those are opportunities for us, if needed, where we can stop there and reset and do whatever course corrections are necessary. But good news, we're able to cruise right through waypoint 0, which is what just happened. We're going to be able to go straight through waypoint 1, which, as I mentioned, is about 220 meters away. So it's safe to say AX-3, they're cruising this morning, which is great. I'm sure that they are so excited. This journey has been about 36 hours or so since they lifted off. Gosh, I guess that was not yesterday, but the day before. They lifted off at 4:49 p.m. Eastern time. And so yeah, about 36 hours they've been in Dragon, and I'm sure that they are very much looking forward to beginning all the science and experiments and everything that they are about to embark on for about the next 2 weeks or so.
You're absolutely right, Kate. I mean, this crew is ready with this mission, and as you mentioned, right, they're ready to do the science and the research, and we know how core that is to this mission, these particular objectives. And you really can't talk about spaceflight, human spaceflight missions without talking about mission patches.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
Right. These mission patches are left behind as this lasting reminder of what occurred on the mission and what the crew was doing, and they end up everywhere, and they're definitely in that vehicle.
Oh, yeah.
And there's going to be more. There's plenty on the International Space Station, and we have them all over our laptops and everywhere. So it's a really big deal for crew to be involved in designing that patch, because it's such a lasting mark of their dedication and their hard work. So you'll often find a lot of the significance for them personally and the nations that they represent. So let's take a look at the AX-3 mission patch now. As you can see, their names, a star, and unique graphics for each nation are featured to highlight all 4 astronauts. With the commander, MLA, Michael Lopez-Alegria, holding dual citizenship, the 5 national flags mark the top edge. The destination, the International Space Station, is the anchoring element in the middle. And what I love about this is that all 4 of them are pilots, and that image of the space station there looks like pilot wings.
Very cool.
Yeah, I love that. On the bottom, you see the phrase plus ultra in Latin, which means further beyond, and this is the mission's motto. So all of this together builds on the patch's theme of exploration and its slogan, exploring further without borders.
I love how each patch is personalized to the crew. It's not just about designing something that looks cool, right? Of course, everybody wants cool mission patches, but I just really appreciate when there's so much thought put behind the design.
Yeah, it's an opportunity for crew to really think about, like, why are we doing this? And what does this mean to us together? And you can see that in the AX-3 patch. You can see it in all mission patches. That's what you hope to get out of it. Yeah.
And like you mentioned, the reflection of it, they're all pilots. I just love that cohesiveness reflected among them. And in line with cohesiveness, there are many teams supporting that 4-person crew. We can see here on our screen, they are getting closer and closer to the International Space Station, like we mentioned before. They passed waypoint 0, which is 400 meters away, so they are getting closer. But the teams all around the globe that are supporting this mission, there are critical positions in each of those places. So here at SpaceX Mission Control, or MCCX, that's the view that you see there on your screen. This is the control center we have here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. We have a position called CORE, which is the Crew Operations Resource Engineer. That is the voice of communication to the, actually there you see there, this is our core for today. That is Celie Grossman, and she is the primary voice in communicating, really the only voice in communicating from SpaceX ground to the crew, and this position is held all through all these dynamic phases of flight. It's very similar to Capcom at Mission Control Houston, which stands for Capsule Communicator. That is basically ground to ISS. Also over at Houston Space Center, we have the flight director that sits next to Capcom. I actually hear a live view of our flight control center. Excuse me, of the Flight Control Center at Mission Control, Houston. This is where Gary is reporting from whenever we go back to him. But the flight director is there next to Capcom, and that person leads the team through.
Copy, Laurel. We'd like for you to kill it and restart it.
And work.
As I was mentioning, next to Capcom is the flight director. That's the individual that leads the team through major milestones. There's also ADCO, that stands for Attitude, Determination, and Control Officer. They handle controls, attitude, orientation of the ISS. There's also VVO, the Visiting Vehicle Officer.
Well, how can we restart it?
Checking. Laurel, we're going to take that one for the ground. So stand by.
So I believe that was Capcom. As I mentioned before, that is the primary voice from Johnson Space Center here, Houston Mission Control to station. And then, of course, there's the flight surgeon, keep continuing to talk about these key roles. Flight surgeon, it's basically, the person that the crew regularly speaks to for scheduled chances of medical conferences. So this is a standard part of spaceflight where we're checking in on the crew and making sure that they're feeling well, and if they're not, assisting them to make them feel better.
Yeah, exactly right, Kate. And you might have heard us pausing there a few times, right? And that's to work with exactly what you mentioned, right? It's a single point of communication. Talking to crew is essential for all of these teams to be able to work together. And it's important to have groups like CORE, disciplines like Capcom to be those single points of voice so that crew and ground teams can work very efficiently together. Without that, it wouldn't be as smooth as it is. And as we know, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And that's part of what we're looking at today is watching this vehicle approach station. It may seem a little slow at times, but it really is smooth, and that's fast. And in addition to MCCH that you see on the screen, MCCA is Axiom Space's Mission Control Center in Houston, Texas as well. MCCA is officially certified control center, joining a large network of other control centers supporting the ISS from all over the world. From this secure facility, teams have live access to voice, video, and data from the ISS and can work alongside their NASA counterparts and SpaceX counterparts to run on-orbit operations and monitor every aspect of the mission in real time, 24/7, for the duration of the crew's mission. And similar to like what you were mentioning, Kate, of having a single point inside these control rooms for Axiom, for MCCA, that room is led by Axel, or Axiom Operations Lead. And around the room that you see, positioned around Axel, are other supporting flight controller positions, each responsible for different aspects of mission support. For Axiom, that includes research, communications, medical, integration and stowage, and timeline operations. So when you put all this together, this is really a significant step in terms of getting to low Earth orbit and sustaining low Earth orbit, because it's the 12th ground segment partner for the ISS program. And with this facility, we're providing our customers and the global community a front row seat to the work being done on station.
So you were talking about comms. I just for those that might not be familiar, just a quick rundown of what that is that we're hearing. We often start with the Quindar tone, which is that unmistakably unique sound.
Beep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so that is the indicator that some sort of comms is going to occur. So we try to really listen for that. And as soon as we hear it, we try to go quiet to make room for those comms. You then also hear something like Dragon Houston on the big loop.
Right.
So that is the standard protocol of basically saying, this is the person I'm calling.
I'm calling from this place on whatever net it is. So in that case, it would be a flight controller, or in that case, in the example I gave, forgive me, it is 2:10 in the morning here, so my brain might be a little slow, but it is, if I would be Capcom in Houston, I would say Dragon Houston on the big net, basically saying, hey Dragon, I'm trying to get a hold of you. Who I am, I'm in Houston, and what net we're talking on. So a little bit of clarification there on why you don't just hear the Quindar tone and then someone saying, hey, we have something floating around in the cabin, or that kind of thing.
Yeah, and all these things for supporting missions like this, it's really important for everybody to kind of know what role they play when. And I think that's one of the things that I absolutely love about these kind of dynamic operations, right? It's, as we mentioned, if you move slow, you move smooth, and if you move smooth, you move fast. And having procedures to help you do that in a training that backs everybody up, right? It's not just crew that trains for these missions, it's all of those flight controllers that we mentioned in Houston, in SpaceX, at Axiom. All of those flight controllers need to know what role they play and when they play it.
Absolutely.
And knowing that allows you to understand, okay, at this critical moment in this flight path, it's my role to kind of lead the team. And it's my role to do the communication. And now it's my role to follow on the team. And I think that's just absolutely amazing part of spaceflight.
So in the capsule, our four-person crew of Axiom 3, they are on their way to the International Space Station. We are coming up to waypoint 1, which is 220 meters away from the station. The crew are seated, they are buckled in, they have their suits on, they've gone through actually, I'm not sure if they have completed the leak check yet. I'll check on that. But they will be completing a leak check on the spacesuit. I am hearing that they did complete that leak check and it was successful, so that's good news. But those spacesuits are really important. We heard us mention before that we have the crew wear them during the more dynamic phases of flight, and that's because those suits protect the crew from depressurization events. The suit inflates with nitrox, which is a nitrogen-oxygen mixture, and they are flame resistant. So cool visual here kind of illustrating it. They are custom to each astronaut. It's a single piece suit. The helmets, which are actually 3D printed, are also, I would love to put one of these on one day. They look so cool. They also, of course, have boots and gloves. Those are all attached. They also have a quick disconnect, or a QD, which is located on the right thigh umbilical. That is what provides that nitrox airflow, as well as where the electronics are connected. And that is important because within the helmet there is a mounted mic as well as their in-ear speakers. So that's where all of that communications connections occur, is that umbilical. And we were talking about training before and how they practice suiting up, although we mentioned suiting up in space would be a little bit different, but they are able to actually suit up in less than 15 minutes. So I would feel like, I think about when I'm getting dressed to go skiing, it definitely takes me longer than 15 minutes to get dressed. So,
the challenge is set.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the crew practices that. This suit is an IVA, or intravehicular activity suit, meaning it's designed for use only inside of Dragon. The suits will stay on Dragon while the crew is living on the International Space Station. The suits that they will use for their extravehicular activity, or EVAs, aka spacewalks, there are designated suits for those EVAs, known as EVA suits. And the amount of time that they spend in suits varies. As we mentioned before, they wear them during launch, but then whenever we did the on-orbit event with the crew, the day before yesterday, an hour and a half after they lifted off, we had an opportunity to chat with them, and they had already taken their suits off and were in their comfort garments. So ultimately, they have to take everything they need with them in order to be fully self-contained in the Dragon. And yeah, ultimately speaking, the suits are not only do they look cool, they are super functional, and most importantly, they are safe. So yeah, it's nice to see we don't have the view at the moment. As we mentioned, we're going to lose the views here and there. So when we have the view, we'll be sure to bring it back. The view of hopefully all four of them seated in their seats, and we'll be able to see those suits in action. So with that being said, let's actually check back in with Gary over in Houston for the latest progress with the approach to the International Space Station.
Hey, thank you, Kate. Thank you, John. Yeah, we're monitoring inside 10 minutes from reaching that waypoint 1. Now, the teams in Hawthorne and in Houston are currently talking through some options. We talked about passing that waypoint 1. That's still part of the plan, but right now we're under active discussions to potentially hold outside of the keep-out sphere. Now, that waypoint 1 is 220 meters in front of the docking access. About 180 meters is right at the cusp of that keep-out sphere. The teams may elect to command a hold right around that area just to assess that everything's in tip-top shape before they proceed. So again, we're tracking inside 10 minutes, about 9 minutes from reaching that waypoint 1. The plan is to execute the approach 1 maneuver. That's just firing the Draco thrusters to proceed into the docking axis, but instead of crossing into the keep-out sphere, we'll go ahead and command a hold at about 180 meters. So we're still following along, still gathering the data. Teams are still discussing, but we are good to proceed past waypoint 1, and we'll continue to discuss. What you're looking at now are the teams inside Mission Control Houston, the International Space Station flight control teams. Of course, teams on both on different areas of the United States here in Houston, and of course in Hawthorne, California, the teams here monitoring the International Space Station. Every position you see here staffed is monitoring a different component and contributing information and data and monitoring, making sure everything's good to the flight director. Flight Director Judd Friedling is leading the teams today in coordination with the mission director in Hawthorne, California, a joint operation indeed. The two flight control centers are working in tandem with the two spacecraft in flight in low Earth orbit. That's the International Space Station being controlled out of this room you see here in Houston, as well as the Dragon controlled from Hawthorne. You see the screens at the front of the room are a little bit dim. We're right now in an orbital nighttime as we continue to orbit the Earth 260 statute miles over the North Pacific Ocean.
Clear for freedom.
And copy, Dragon. And for your awareness, we are going to proceed past waypoint 1, and then the ground will be commanding a hold at 180 meters in order to work some ISS solar array configuration.
We will hold at 180 meters and be advised that in your last transmission we picked up an echo.
Copy, Dragon. Understand you're reporting an echo, and that's correct. The ground will be commanding a hold post waypoint 1.
For what it's worth, the echo just disappeared in that transmission.
We're getting views from inside the Dragon cabin. It was Michael Lopez-Alegria, the voice from inside Dragon Freedom, commander of the Axiom crew. He's confirming what we did report and the flight teams did discuss, proceeding past waypoint 1 and commanding a hold. Teams working in tandem just to make sure everything's in tip-top shape before continuing to press on. Again, we're in an orbital nighttime right now over the North Pacific Ocean. Expecting expect the sunrise here at about 4:45 a.m. Central Time. Once the teams hold, we'll continue to keep in touch with the flight control teams and share the latest on docking times and status of the crew. For now, we do have waypoint 1 and the trajectory converging on that mile marker just inside 5 minutes. Just as a recap, the plan is to proceed past waypoint 1, as the teams have agreed on. That's an approach 1 maneuver, just firing the Draco service, the service section Draco thrusters to push inwards right alongside the docking axis. This is directly in front of the docking port. But there is sort of an imaginary line around there called the keep out sphere, which is about at the 180 meter mark. The plan right now is to proceed past waypoint 1 at 220 meters, proceed inwards to about 180 meters, and command hold. From inside the Dragon cabin, you can see sort of the trajectory. When you look at these trajectories from the displays inside Dragon, what is being calculated in real time are different breakout maneuvers. But right now the plan is to proceed past waypoint 1 and go ahead and command that hold. You can sort of see, though it is in a slightly lower resolution, you can sort of see the docking light on the forward end of Dragon. It has this pulsing phenomenon, and as it pulses, is illuminating the International Space Station. What you're seeing is the forward end of the space station. So the docking port is coming into view as we're almost 3 minutes from that docking axis. It's the forward port, but the docking light itself is illuminating the outside of the station as we continue over in an orbital nighttime over the Pacific Ocean. Now we're listening into the flight control teams. Wanted to report some rationale. Again, we're proceeding past waypoint 1, about 2 minutes from now. This 10 minutes allows the Spartan console here in Mission Control Houston. Spartan is responsible for power and thermal monitoring of the space station systems, looking at some temperature fluctuations in the solar arrays, just wanting those to dampen out just a tad, and so we can expect a
Dragon
hold.
SpaceX on the big loop, noting approach 1 and soft capture ring extension will begin shortly, and then ground will command the hold ahead of 150 meters. And a reminder that manual impulsive retreat recovery is not permitted.
Y'all, SpaceX.
Crew Operations Resource Engineer in Hawthorne, California, reiterating the plan to the Axiom crew inside Dragon. Again, we're proceeding past waypoint 1 and holding just outside 180 meters. Right now, the plan is the Spartan is monitoring Some temperature fluctuations on the ISS solar arrays. Should just be a couple of minutes. Right now we're looking at approximately 10 to 15, though we'll monitor real time and provide data as we get more from the teams and they provide their assessment, just to make sure that everything's in tip-top shape like we have been reporting, to go ahead and proceed into the keep-out sphere. But the teams are just looking for just a little bit more time to gather that data before giving the all clear to proceed inwards. Again, towards waypoint 2 is the next milestone, holding at just outside 180 meters. Once they proceed in, the next milestone will be waypoint 2. Teams will conduct a go, no-go poll on whether to go ahead and hold or proceed inwards again. We'll check in and continue to check in with the teams to monitor Dragon's progress for docking later this morning. And we pass through waypoint 1, holding for confirmation of that approach 1 performance. 214 meters in closing.
Stand station, we see vehicle mode approach to alarm point moving to step 3.
Houston copies.
Continuing to listen into the loops here in Mission Control Houston, coordinating with the teams over in Mission Control Hawthorne.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. The solar array configuration has been completed, so we will be proceeding with approach 1 and no hold.
Copies, no hold.
And right on time, the teams, instead of commanding that hold at about 180 meters, right at about the 185 meter mark,
Station, we see range
we are continuing on
182.
forward.
Dragon in the corridor, attitude as expected.
Houston copies.
From inside the International Space Station, Laurel O'Hara monitoring Dragon's approach with her, it's called Rendezvous Proximity Operations Panel. This is providing data to inside the International Space Station, reporting the same data that we're seeing on the ground. We're now inside 180 meters, proceeding inside the keep-out sphere. The next milestone will be waypoint 2. Teams will continue to assess the vehicle's performance throughout its progress inwards towards that next milestone and conduct a go, no-go poll to proceed past that waypoint towards docking. That go, no-go poll expected to begin in approximately 6 minutes. They may elect to do it a little bit early, but everything proceeding even better than we were expecting. That monitoring of the ISS solar array seemed to resolve itself, so we're pressing inwards. Everything looking good here from inside Mission Control Houston, but again, we're not the only game in town. Mission Control Houston you see on the right, working in tandem with the teams on the left. With that, why don't we check in with Kate and John over in Hawthorne. Kate and John.
Thank you very much, Gary. You know, that was a great example of how you can hear things change dynamically in flight, and with proper training, flight controllers know how to assess their systems and their configurations and make a call on it and move forward.
Absolutely, they're the experts.
Exactly, exactly. You know, and crew also has been training quite a bit, and in addition to their training for systems like that, they're also training for their research. So this crew in particular is going to be participating in over 30 different scientific efforts over the course of their 2 weeks on the orbiting laboratory. So let's go ahead and highlight 3 from each of the countries who are flying today. First up is the Italian research portfolio. The ISOC system, developed by the Italian Air Force, provides an updated space object catalog and state-of-the-art algorithms for space events.
Houston on the big loop, can you confirm you are ready for docking?
Sensation, we are ready for docking.
With that, at waypoint 2, Dragon will briefly pause to align for docking, then automatically resume approach.
Copy.
We had heard some good news there. We got the we heard that the teams pulled go for docking, so excellent news for the AX3 crew.
Yeah, exactly. All right, and with that, the ISOC command and control software utilize the Italian Air Force SSA, or Space Situational Awareness Center, as a European hub for assessing re-entry and fragmentation of space objects. The ISOC Services for ISS project is a proof of concept experiment aimed at demonstrating how, in future space missions such as cislunar or Martian, astronauts could be able to obtain near real-time conjunction analysis with limited support from Earth ground segments or even autonomously.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, soft capture ring extension is complete.
SpaceX freedom recovery.
Good news there, that soft capture mechanism is what will make initial contact with the space station when Dragon is, close enough to touch the station.
And the Turkish Space Agency also has a broad range of scientific efforts for this mission, starting with Uzman. Algae have many properties that make them ideal organisms to support humans during long-duration spaceflight missions. Not only could they serve as a nutritional source, included in astronaut menus, algae could also remove carbon dioxide and produce oxygen for spacecraft environmental control systems, help regulate spacecraft temperatures, recycle certain wastes, and even act as a source of fuel. The data generated from this experiment will be used to advance the development of microalgal life support systems for space missions and could impact the design of future carbon dioxide capture, oxygen conversion, wastewater treatment systems, and provide fertilizer options for other agricultural crops grown in space. And also highlighting the scientific efforts from ESA and the Swedish Space Agency, let's start with MEMO-BC. This experiment aims to determine the direct and delayed post-flight effects on neural stem cells, after long-term microgravity exposure, and investigate if the delayed effects are the result of genetic changes emerging during microgravity, or to be secreted components in the medium during flight.
Dragon Freedom SpaceX on the big loop. Please confirm that you are ready for final approach and visors are down. MCCX and Houston have pulled go for docking.
SpaceX freedom, confirm all 4 crew visors down, we're ready for docking.
Copy, Dragon, go for docking. Ground will be enabling approach shortly. And a reminder, once you're inside the crew hands-off point, retreat and breakout are not permitted.
Copy.
All right, so there on your screen, on the right-hand side of your screen, is our Crew Operations and Resource Engineer, or SpaceX Core, for tonight. That is Celie Grossman. We heard great news being given to the AX-3 crew. Their visors are now down, and the teams in Houston are ready for them to begin docking. So things are starting to get very exciting. This is basically what everything has been leading to for the last 36 hours. So we're very excited for the AX-3 crew to get closer and closer to what will be their home for up to the next 14 days. With that, let's go back over to Gary Jordan, who is at Johnson Space Center and tracking the final movements of Dragon Freedom.
Thank you, Kate. Right on time. We're about 2 minutes away from Waypoint 2's arrival. The teams here in Mission Control Houston have worked in tandem with the teams over in Hawthorne. Both teams have pulled go to proceed past Waypoint 2 for docking. Now in this scenario, instead of a commanded hold at the Waypoint 2 marker, which is 20 meters away from the International Space Station, the Dragon will make a brief pause at that Waypoint 2 mark, again 20 meters, only for a short couple of seconds, just to reconfigure its software to change for docking mode. So it'll pause there for just a brief couple of seconds and then proceed inwards for docking. That is coming up very shortly. We're just about 40 meters away from the International Space Station now and closing. It's an orbital nighttime, so we're only going to see the navigation lights and docking light blinking once we get views from the International Space Station teams here in Mission Control Houston, monitoring from the perspective of the International Space Station and the joint operations with the teams over in Hawthorne. Flight control teams reporting that the rate of approach is as expected. Everything's going well. And again, the teams have pulled go to proceed past Waypoint 2, coming up in about 10 meters. We're inside 30 meters. Not only are the teams you see here monitoring the approach of Dragon Freedom and the Axiom crew inside to the International Space Station, we also have NASA astronauts Laurel O'Hara and Jasmine Mogbelli inside the International Space Station, monitoring the approach as well. Now getting some views of Dragon. In the orbital nighttime, you can see those service section Dracos firing to keep its attitude right on the docking axis and its range rate as expected. Green starboard light and red port light, navigation lights on the forward end of Dragon coming into view. Again, we are in an orbital nighttime, so it is a bit dark. Those specks you see in the frame are dead pixels from the radiation on the camera. Confirmed Waypoint 2 arrival. Dragon is now pausing and reconfiguring for its approach to the docking port.
Station Houston on the big loop. Drag is on final approach and is go for docking. Monitor for steps 5 and 6 and 1.102. Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Station copies. We see vehicle mode approach to docking port, range decreasing.
We copy.
The Waypoint 2 pause is over, and we're proceeding with final approach, now inside 18 meters from the International Space Station.
Copy.
Laurel O'Hara, NASA astronaut in the International Space Station, monitoring the approach. as the vehicle is just 15 meters away from the International Space Station where she resides, seeing the range rate, the rate of approach to dock with the International Space Station being as expected inside 15 meters and closing. A little inside 13 meters, the range rate continues to decrease. That's as expected. Flight controllers are estimating just inside 3 minutes from contact with the International Space Station.
Freedom is at 10 meters.
Copy 10.
Dragon Commander Michael Lopez-Alegria confirming inside at 10 meters. Dragon continuing its approach as expected. We may see a brief handover, a loss of video for just a couple of seconds and regain it. There's a chance we'll have it continuously through this, but if we do lose it, we will expect to regain it back by the time of contact.
Meters.
Copy 5 meters.
Inside 5 meters at the 2 meter mark, we may hear the call out chop, crew hands off procedure. At that point, the crew cannot command an abort. Everything looking good though. Inside 4 meters.
Meters.
Copy 2.
Loss of signal as expected.
Dragon SpaceX soft capture confirmed.
You heard that call out from the Crew Operations Resource Engineer in Hawthorne, California, 4:42 a.m. Central Time. Dragon Freedom has made contact and soft capture with the International Space Station as the two were flying together 262 statute miles over the South Pacific Ocean.
Ring retraction in progress.
See it.
With a good soft capture, the ring is now retracting, pulling Dragon closer in with the International Docking Adapter aboard the International Space Station. This is part of a series of steps to formally hard mate the Dragon to the International Space Station. After the soft capture ring is fully retracted and bringing the Dragon inwards, there is a series of 12 hooks that will secure Dragon to the International Space Station for what's called a hard dock. After that, the umbilical will be deployed, providing power and communications and data between the Dragon and the International Space Station. This is the docking sequence. Once the umbilical is extended and mated, the docking sequence is complete. Again, that soft capture time where Dragon made contact and a soft capture with the International Space Station, 4:42 a.m. Central Time. Station and Dragon were 262 statute miles over the South Pacific Ocean. Ring retraction proceeding as expected, getting views from one of the cameras on the Japanese exposed facility on the forward end of the space station, seeing the starboard side of the Dragon. As we continue to monitor the progress of this ring retraction, now getting some sun illuminating the nadir or Earth-facing side, and now the whole thing of Dragon Freedom. Sun is rising over the South Pacific Ocean as Dragon and International Space Station continue to fly on a southeastern trajectory. Flight controllers monitoring the ring retraction and the alignment with the international docking adapter to proceed with driving those hooks. They'll be driven in 2 sets, gangs of 6.